just want to take 1 or 2 minutes before we get started with tonight's program to give you a little bit of information about our past, a little bit about our present, and a little bit about our future. Those of you who have never been to the Museum of Disability History, a special welcome tonight. We actually got our start in 1998 when the president and CEO of People Inc., Dr. James Bowles, who's with us tonight, had the vision for creating a repository for information about the history of disability. At that time, he was teaching a college course at the University of Buffalo, and he recognized that there was a great need to become more comprehensive in that field. In 1999, a year later, the very first exhibits for the Museum of Disability History were opened at the company headquarters for People Inc. Fast forward a few more years to 2010, October of 2010, so we're soon approaching our 3-year anniversary in this wonderful facility. We're in the training center right now for People Inc., but downstairs is the museum complex itself. So when we're finished here in this room after Char is done, we're going to whisker downstairs so that we can enjoy some refreshments, and that many of you will maybe for the first time are continuing your adventure in the museum itself. You're welcome to take that in tonight as we proceed. Couple that's our past and what's happening tonight. Few things that are also going on. We have a membership drive we're currently taking part in, and if you'd like to help us with that, we have a membership form here on our table. That is very important, and our members really become the lifeblood of the organization, helping us with all of our current projects and everything that we do here. In addition to helping us financially, you may want to help us as a volunteer. We have many, many volunteer opportunities, and they're more fully explained on this flyer. All this information is yours to peruse and take home as you would like tonight, okay? Our newsletter is here if you want to get a comprehensive idea of everything that takes place at the museum. Our next event after tonight will be the Disability Films Festival and Speaker Series. This year it will take place on Saturday, October 12th. There will be 2 screenings of the movie Inclusion, The Joy of Drumming. It tells the story of a Japanese drumming team who happens to be intellectually disabled, and they rose to great heights in Japan, becoming the nation's second achieving drum corps in Japan. The information for that is explained on the flyer. There's also a synopsis of the movie Inclusion if you'd like to read that. After that, if you have kids, grandkids, nephews, nieces, neighbors who may enjoy a great day on Columbus Day, Columbus Day is Kids Day at the Museum of Disability History, so please bring your families, spend the day with us. We've got a lot of great activities planned, including a recreation of Seguin's therapy obstacle course. If you've never heard of that, you'll have to come and see what it's all about. The last event I wanted to talk about will take place on October 19th. It's a Saturday. Dr. Michael Waymeyer from Minnesota is coming to spend the morning with us, and he's going to talk about his book, Good Blood, Bad Blood, the science, nature, and the myth of the Calicax. If anybody's familiar with the Calicax, they were at one point the work of H.H. Goddard, who had created a fictional family to explain some principles in the field. But Dr. Waymeyer is going to debunk a lot of the principles that were formerly believed about intellectual disabilities. Okay? And the last but not least, many of you probably have an interest in architecture. That's why you're here this evening. We probably have produced a new calendar called The Abandoned Asylums of New England. It's a 2014 calendar. There's beautiful images from our Abandoned Asylums book, which we produced last year. This is a neat calendar for 2014, and I always have to get that commercial, and it's available today in our gift shop. Thank you all for coming, and without further delay, I'd like to introduce Doug Platt, our curator at the museum. Doug?
Hi everybody, I'm Doug Platt. I'm curator here at the Museum of Disability History, and I'm proud to welcome Char Szabo-Perricelli. She's our inaugural speaker in the Dialogues on Disability Speaker Series, and the reason she's here is that she shares a passion not only for photography, but also for a place near and dear to many people's hearts, the J.N. Adam Developmental Center, or the City of Buffalo Tuberculosis Hospital, or fill in the blank, because it's lived a number of lives down in Perrysburg. And Char has some interesting photographs as well as some interesting takes on what might be done with it. And Char, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks,
You're welcome,
everybody. Let's get to know you a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I've been making stuff since I was a kid. My parents were always very supportive of me for anything creative that I wanted to try and do, so they also had to channel my exuberance and my unlimited amounts of energy into something a little more constructive than getting in trouble. So from the time I was 4, I just took art classes and was just making things and just never followed the rules, and I don't like walls and being confined, so the more I spent outdoors, the happier everybody was. And just keep going. I just love to get into detail, and information about things, history, just floats my boat.
So you have an artistic bent, and why photography? How did you get into photography as this drive?
Photography, I think, found me. I went to Damon up the road for my BFA in graphic design, and they only offered one photography course. And in the, as semesters went by, I just, kept putting it aside until it was offered at a convenient time for me. I always wanted to get out, as early as possible. So I ended up taking this photography course, and it wasn't enough. I got to the end of it, and I said, oh, come on, they can't be it. I want more. So I went to the dean and I said, I want to write my own course. You have not satisfied anyone that has any penchant or passion for photography. So I did that. I wrote it on close-up work, went out, bought some macro lenses, and created a monster and earned 3 credit hours.
So that shows a lot of initiative, creating your own course for college study. Of course, Damon's right up the road here on Main Street. We're at 3826 Main Street. A short jog up the street, there's the University of Buffalo that was once home to the Erie County Insane Asylum and Alms House. A little farther up the street at the corner of Main and Humboldt Parkway used to be the Providence Lunatic Asylum that was run by the Sisters of Charity. Go a little farther, there's St. Mary's School for the Deaf. So right in this small stretch of road here in Main Street, Buffalo, Main Street, New York, really, Route 5, there's a lot of disability-related buildings. And one that's a little farther out of town is J.N. Adam Memorial Hospital. It's located in Perrysburg, New York. Originally, it was the City of Buffalo Tuberculosis Hospital. It was built on land purchased by the renowned mayor, James Noble Adam of Buffalo. And by the way, when he was mayor, he had 3 objectives: cleaner lights, or cleaner streets and better lights in Buffalo, improve school system, and, say it with me, develop the water fund. So anyway, Mayor Adam, anyway, he gave this land so there could be a hospital to take people suffering from tuberculosis out into one of the second highest point in elevation in New York, Perrysburg, New York, for treatment of tuberculosis. So that's a little J.N. history, but why J.N. Adam? What is it that J.N. Adam, and you call this series her inside voice, so what drew you to her?
I moved out to the Southern Tier back in 2001 just to get away from it all, and my neighbor, who is now 94, used to work there as an inspector for the health department for New York State. And she said, come on, I'll take you for a drive and I'm going to show you some cool stuff around here. And J.N. Adam was one of those places. And that was before the fence went up and the gates and the locks and the no trespassing signs. You were actually able to drive through the beautiful grounds of this place. And she started narrating all kind of facts and statistics and all that stuff I normally like. But as she was speaking, I just shut her off because the stuff around me, the visual, the audible, there was just something about this place. It was like a siren's call. I just heard a voice, not like the kind that they put you away for, but just this energy and this nurturing atmosphere of this place just drew me in, and it's just never let me go. I just go back and go back and go back and just can't get enough.
So I understand that there were also kind of scheduled visits to JN. Could you tell me about any one of those that you went on?
The first one, and only one scheduled, was 2009. New York State opened up the gates and they had some prospective buyers, some movers and shakers, and also a group, a preservation group calling themselves the Friends of Jan Adam. And I had shown them some of the photographs I had taken in years past, on and off, and they invited me along as their photographer. And I donated that work so they could populate their website and get the word out about this beautiful place.
Well, that's interesting, because with the photography, they say every picture tells a story, or every picture's worth fill in the blank 1,000, 10,000 words. What story is Jan Adam telling you?
You know, for it being such a pivotal healthcare facility over history, short history, but history nonetheless, I just feel like she's become a victim. All the people that were taken care of and healed there, you know, put away from mainstream society, she kind of symbolizes that isolation, that, you know, we needed you then, but we don't need you now. It's just this energy and life that's there that I feel is just being wasted. It's on such a beautiful piece of property. It could be so many things if, you know, the right people took responsibility and accountability for it. And she has a very low profile, and again I call it she because of that maternal life energy that just emanates when you're there. A lot of other places get news, get media. H.H. Richardson, perfect example, great success story. She's out in Perrysburg, and you know, we don't pay attention, I guess, to a lot of rural places. It's more what the city is doing and what the popular place to save is, and you know, what gets media attention. So I just feel like I'm her conduit. It's like if you look at the photos and you read the story almost tells itself.
Yeah, well, it was designed by a prominent architect, James Hopper Coxhead. It did use state-of-the-art concepts in the treatment of tuberculosis. The French doors that open up from the patient ward so they could roll out on the broad porches so they could have the fresh air, and also enjoyed treatment known as heliotherapy, or the sun cure. Sun is a great antiseptic for everything, they say. And yeah, it's a massive campus. When it opened, there was about nearly 300 acres, and by 1935 they expanded, so it took up about 700 acres. So there's tons of land. They had some really innovative techniques for curing tuberculosis. There was the gradual increase in the amount of exposure to the sun, plenty of frolicking around in all weathers in loincloths.
Yeah.
It definitely was a place that seemed to try to merge the healing forces of nature within a man-made institution. And a lot of institutions did isolate people, but really the reason I think that they chose Perrysburg and isolation was necessary is the same reason they used to have the "do not spit on the sidewalk" signs around. Tuberculosis was, you know, passed by a human sputum. So.
It's still full of a lot of light. For it being full of mold and mildew and crumbling cement, and the only thing holding up parts of it, especially the exterior patient wings, is scaffolding. But it's just so full of light. It's beautiful. From the dome that is pretty well known. There's been a lot of photographers who just can't get enough of that dome, to the clear story windows that go around it, underneath. Even the patient wings and the hallways, everything is very well lit, very open. Even the way the buildings are kind of a hug around themselves. It's just built a little differently than some of the institutionalized places from back then.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Oculus at the dining room was rumored to be from the Temple of Music,
Right.
where President McKinley was assassinated at the close of the Pan Am Exposition of 1901. That Mayor Adam was a member of the financial board for that. So there's speculation about it, but you know, others have noticed that, well, it's not a Tiffany window, which
Right.
was at the Pan Am, and there's some other ideas about it. But I think what's really neat about Jan Adam is the fact that you do have all the different pieces that could make it like the Richardson Olmsted complex, but it is
Very
far
much so.
away. So it's the travel. You remarked that you talked to the town historian in Perrysburg. She had an interesting idea about what it was like.
Yes, I asked her, I went out about 3 weeks ago to talk to her. I wanted to just get some background of what the town was like because there's not a whole lot there anymore. And I asked her specifically, what was Perrysburg before, during, and after the heyday of Jay and Adam? And her answer was pretty simple: nothing, everything, and nothing. It was just, it created jobs. It was its own community. It had its own farm where they were raising crops to feed people in a healthy manner. They had their own fire department. It was its own city in a city. It employed tons of people. It brought people that had family there in to visit. In fact, some of the buildings that don't exist on the property anymore were children's cottages. Back in the day when tuberculosis was being treated there, women were strictly child rearers. It was not the man's job, it was the woman's job. And they felt that if the children could be there, the mothers would heal better and more quickly, knowing that their children were being taken care of and entertained and fed well. They weren't allowed physical contact because they believed that saliva was the transmitter of the TB virus. But they had a zoo, they had a playground, they had this whole little campus built just for the kids. It's just, like I said, an amazing, huge place with lots of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, a lot of people think of institutions as buildings, but really places like JN were communities, even to the extent that, yes, they had their own power plant and hospital and church and elementary. They had schools on campus. They had residential facilities for employees. They also had a monthly newsletter called Grit Grin that was published. And I think that's kind of neat because it shows that the determination of this community to overcome tuberculosis, heal, but also maintain that rhythm of life where they would, sure, they'd have news from the front office and the administration building, but they also would have gossip, they would have jokes, they would have a list of events that went on.
The humanity of the place.
Yeah, who went, you know, who was going out with who. There were, you know, there are stories of people that were patients at the hospital that married caretakers from the hospital. So it really is a little microcosm of the way society kind of treats disability and the progression from maybe a benign neglect for people with disabilities to kind of a paternalistic control of people to what we're experiencing today, which is really a lot, some would call it self-directed, some would call it on your own, but there's still the interplay between society and how it provides for people with special needs within its population.
Yeah, even in the little museum they have set up for the history of Perrysburg, there's a guest book of people who have been there, and there was an entertainment circuit or something that went between Buffalo and Syracuse. A lot of very popular entertainers at the time were contracted that if they performed in Buffalo, they also had to perform in Syracuse. And some of them didn't want to have their identities known, so in the guest book they wrote things like Julius Caesar and Buck Rogers, and very interesting. You know, it just was a huge, popular, pivotal part of what went on out in that area.
Well, you tour around Jan Adams, you see a lot of the sites, you've definitely captured a lot of the interplay of light, structure, shadow in your photography, but one of the things that really stands out is here's a place that was dedicated for care, healing, returning people to full strength so they can go back out into society, at least while it was a TB hospital. Another woman, Mother Nature, really hasn't been too kind to the buildings down in Jan Adams.
No, it's suffering very badly from natural reclamation. A phrase I had picked up from the Friends of Jay and Adam was demolition by neglect. It's windows and doors are wide open, the elements are just coming in, rain, snow, it's just literally rotting away, and it's a shame to see it. I mean, it is almost cyclical. A lot of my work is about nature and life cycles and reuse, and this place just symbolizes that, you know, to the max. It's just really falling down on itself.
The reuse is a great a great term for the history of JN. I mean, tuberculosis hospital for a good 4 decades, involvement with the Gowanda State Insane Asylum not too far from there. Eventually it's basically the big little sister of the West Seneca State School starting about 1960 when it went over to the Department of Mental Hygiene and started serving people with intellectual disabilities, or the mentally retarded as they were known back then. So you think that there might be some way to reuse the grounds, or?
Well, you know, I like to be an optimist when it comes to these beautiful places, but in talking to the town historian out there, Jody Shaw, who was wonderful, spent a few hours with me, feels that it's beyond. It's full of asbestos, lead paint. What it would cost to probably do anything with it would far outweigh the taxes that Buffalo supposedly owes on it. I don't quite know what the politics are, but there's been a lot of debate of who wants to own it, who really owns it, who owes the taxes, and who's going to take care of it. And so far, no one has stepped up and said, it's my responsibility or our responsibility, let's do something. I understand from her that there was interest in putting it back almost to what it was when it was a tuberculosis hospital. There was a serious bid on it by some private investor who wanted to make it almost a respite, more like a sanatorium rather than a sanitarium, where friends and family of people with disabilities could go out for a week, a weekend, 2 weeks, and they would have facilities and diet and activities for disabled people as well as the families of those people, where they could spend time together, get out to the country, just as a little getaway. And I mean, it's perfect for that. An artistic community, perfect. I mean, talk about inspiring and being isolated and moved by the powers that are out there just in nature. It would be a great artist community. There's just so many things that could be done. It's beautiful. The woodlands are just phenomenal. And the Friends of J.N. Adams so far have been, I guess, pretty effective in holding off loggers that want to come in and pretty much clear cut all the wooded area that's out there. And Perrysburg is fighting it because, yes, would they love the income for their town, but they feel it's selling out if this would turn into just a bunch of timber.
Yeah, it's funny how, you know, when you mention how much it would cost because of some of the things that are inherent within the structure down in Perrysburg, because, you know, the Museum of Disability History looks at the care and treatment of people with disabilities over time, and whether it's bloodletting or cure through leeches or removal of infected teeth or electroshock therapy. I mean, these are all ideas that were good at one time. We thought we're doing the best we can, just like we thought that, hey, this asbestos stuff is a really great flame, you know, inhibitor. Look how great that lead paint holds its color. So a lot of the things, a lot of the ideas that were put into making that the premier place it was have seen its time come and go, which is, there's a lot of things churning about in the disability community today that really mirror that progression about how we give care, how we build buildings, but also how we kind of view people. In a lot of cases, people with disabilities have been viewed as something to be managed, if not something disposable.
Right.
Do you find that that's something that you try to talk about with your artwork?
Definitely. Like I mentioned earlier, I do a series of found object called Earth Objects, and a lot of it is just what I pick up on the road and in the woods, things that people throw away or ignore, and that's what moves me. I don't know why, but it just seems like everything has a life of its own and had a life of its own and needs that respect. And these old buildings that I go into, if I worried about asbestos, I wouldn't be doing what I do. But I think the stuff needs to be respected, just like the people that spend time. There were people there. It affected a lot of lives. There's history there. And to just, you know, we just worship everything that's new, and, you know, when it's not, we throw it away. And I just feel that some of these places deserve a little more honor.
You talk about some of these places, and yes, a lot of these institutions were almost like faded Hollywood starlets. It's like you really must have been something in your prime.
Day, yeah.
And but could you tell me a little bit about some of the other places you visited?
I've been through H.H. Richardson, obviously, they've opened the doors, you know, pay your fee, take a tour, see what they're fixing, they don't let you into the good parts, more a liability probably than anything. I've also been to the German orphanage in Buffalo, just before it was renovated into housing in the city. It was a place, it was called the German orphanage at the time. I don't know why, if there were more German people that were orphans than other ethnicities.
Well, no,
but,
they would have served that population when a lot of time there was still a balkanization of the immigrants within this bustling city of Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, Queen City, the Lakes, it's the last stop on Vaudeville. It's still the second biggest city in the state.
Right.
Buffalo, and that's one of the reasons that JN became what it did. The community got together and pooled the resources from a very thriving community that was really the gateway to the West. I mean, with the number of railroads that came through here, with the lake trade, Buffalo was a huge center of commerce, and it was packed with very proud different people from all over, in a lot of cases, Europe. So there was strong religious groups that did band together by ethnicity or national origin.
Okay, I was always wondering why it was called the German orphanage. And again, everything was segregated there too, but it was by boys and girls.
Well, you gotta keep them apart.
Yeah, absolutely, even when they were little. The beautiful chapel there, it's gone. There were 9 buildings when I was there. There's 3 left, but they're housing units. I also do a lot of old railroad work. Recently was in an abandoned subway with a female friend in about a quarter mile into the dark, and we said we probably should turn around, but the artwork was phenomenal on the walls in there. Another healthcare facility though was the Jackson Sanatorium out in Dansville. They call it the Castle on the Hill. As you're driving into Dansville, you can't miss it. It's halfway up the mountain, and it's a beautiful red brick structure that's been burned, vandalized, knocked down, tagged, and
So
pillaged.
sanatorium.
Sanatorium.
JN was a sanitarium.
Yes.
So sanatorium.
More like a health respite. They actually invented granola there. Hollywood stars would go there to eat granola, clean out their colons, sunbathe naked on the tile roofs.
Well, a good clean colon is good.
Absolutely, and that's what Jackson Sanatorium was all about. Beautiful facility, recently purchased by, I believe, the Krog Corporation, and they were talking about building it or changing it into condos, but it's one more example of asbestos, lead paint. How much is it going to cost to fix this place up versus just demolish it and start over?
Yeah, and sanatoriums and the whole idea of general health care too. There's still things that linger. There's the people that, you know, get a colonics. There's the emphasis on brand, natural, organic foods, and the whole idea that you can actually moderate your own health by what you eat, how you interact with nature, and it's really another way of looking at how society's chosen to deal with managing people with disabilities. In a lot of cases, they remove them from the natural rhythms of life and make an artificial structure that really doesn't allow them to grow and prosper in a society that would accept them. What do you feel is the role of photography in preservation of some of these historic places?
Unfortunately, I think sometimes photography is the preservation. It doesn't just play a role in it. A lot of my images of places I've been are all that's left. And I just feel that photography moves people. It draws people in. A lot of people are interested in either doing it, looking at it, and it's just if there is going to be nothing left, I want to feel like maybe I was one of the last people there. Maybe I was one of the last people that could put this in front of someone and say, look at what we had. Let's take care of what we have now if we can't do anything about what was.
Well, there seems to be a legion of photographers that go to these decaying institutions, not just health and psychiatric and intellectual disabilities, but just about all the different crumbling institutions around. And that phenomenon has picked up its own little catchphrase, which is urbex, or urban exploration. What is it that sets you apart from the rest of the urbex gang?
Mostly my age and agility, but a lot of 20-year-olds are doing it, a lot of 30-year-olds are doing it, and I don't know, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think creatives like to be pigeonholed and labeled, and it is not all I do. It's my favorite thing to do, but I think it has to do with being more of an archivist and documenting. I don't go in there with my liquor bottle or my spray can or my crowbar. I go in with my camera. And I was recently told by someone in Rochester who does this that I'm old hat because I go by, leave footprints, take photos. Now the current urbex thing seems to be take something out of there, make art out of it, sell it, so you at least have a piece of it because it's only going to be buried in the rubble. And I totally disagree. I want something for the archaeologists 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Let them be the ones to dig through it and find it. I think it has to do with respect. I think it has to do with that feeling of people were here, history is here, not to desecrate it or destroy it so the next person doesn't get to see it, to just let it be there for somebody else. And I know a lot of the younger, easy for me to say since I'm the age I am, that a lot of it is about partying and tagging and posing. I don't know if you caught, there was some therapeutic tubs. There's been a group from Toronto that's come down and posed in the bathtubs, posed on the stage, posed in the wheelchairs. To me, it's about respect, and it's just archive it, document it.
That's kind of a teenage boy mentality. It's like, look what I've done, look where I've been, look what I've been with.
Yes, and these places are treasures. They're not trophies. I don't look at it as, do I post my images on Facebook, on my website? Absolutely, but it isn't that. It isn't like, look what I could do, look where I was. It's more of, look at this place, remember it, read about it.
Well, it's a great way to get other people to see the condition that she's in, and gives you another venue for sharing your feelings, not only about art and photography, but also about social issues, and really the history of people with disabilities, how we care for them. It's a social issue that's been with us since the beginning of time, even before humankind. There have been people with disabilities, that have been parts of our communities. So I guess the big question for me is like, what do you think is the ultimate outcome of your research, your photography, your passion, and your advocacy for that grand dame down in the hill in Perrysburg that Jan had at Memorial Hospital?
Well, ideally, I'd like to be the next book in your Abandoned History series. But public awareness, just reminding people that these places do exist, getting it out in people's faces, talking to people who have spent time there, it's part of their history too, to just be her outside voice. I just want to be a conduit for this beautiful, beautiful place, and to just, tip the scales maybe in her favor while there's any chance at all of something being done to save her.
Well, Jan closed in April of 1993. It's been a good decade. You've been out there a few times. Dr. Bowles sent Dave and myself down there. We visited in 2005. Kind of a snowy day, kind of like one of the days you were down there. Hopefully we'll get a chance to visit it again, whether it's a guided tour, maybe get a chance to, take a look at it, what it's like today, compare it against what you've documented, and there's probably still a wide number of artifacts left there, because the place does, in some of your photographs, look like people just packed up and left. So you never know what's down there that can still be salvaged. And I know, speaking as the curator of the museum, I would love to have artifacts from Jan. It's a great look at not only disability history writ large, but also New York State history. So I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing your ideas. I'd also like to let everybody know that, yes, there are refreshments downstairs, but now that the slideshow's over, maybe you have any questions, Char would entertain any questions you have about her work or her feelings about Jan. And I'll take this opportunity to ask Dave to maybe turn the house lights up too, so it's not quite so dark and moody up here. So thank
I
you.
like it like this, thank you.
Turns out. I think it's okay.
How do you think that your work, that's very impressive.
Thank you.
How do you think that your work will change the way, sort of the mainstream things of the disability community? And I'm saying this as an autistic person who's got the whole sort of patronizing attitude, paternalistic attitude. How do you think that your work can sort of change that? Or alter it, or sort of get people to think, sort of be conscious of how they look at the disability communities?
I guess my work so far has been pretty historical and based on the past more than the present. But what I can say is that in my dealings with the museum for the last 2 months, I have learned to become much more aware of the disabled community and how important it is to realize that we're just all in the same community and we're all different. We're all different in some way, and a disability isn't something that constitutes treating people differently. We all want to be the same. We're all just people. And will my work lead to that? It may. I have a new series coming up in my head that I want to work on this winter that has to do with dolls representing lives of people, and a few of those lives have to do with illness and institutionalization. So it may be in work to come.
Char, you mentioned the friends of Jay and Adam. What do her friends do? I mean, what are they doing to try and save her?
They were actually advocates for a very long time of getting people involved that used to work there, who had family that spent time there, getting some of our local politicians involved, trying to have accountability held. And from what I see, not what I know, there hasn't been a lot of activity on their page or their website for a while. And I just feel like I want to pick up the pace again. They were a very strong voice. They were putting petitions out and working with the town of Perrysburg and very involved, really good people with good intentions. And I don't know if that ball's been dropped. I don't know if there's other things going on. I signed the petition, but I wasn't a member per se, not usually a joiner. So I could only hope that they haven't forgotten either.
That cut glass dome, if that wasn't from the exposition, do they know where the one went from the exposition? Or where did this one come from?
From what I understand, this was from the expo. They just aren't sure it was from the Temple of Music, but it definitely was not the central dome where McKinley was shot. Julie from Friends of Jay and Adam and I had spoken at length about it, and the Friends of Jay and Adam did a lot of research on it, and they believe that that's what they found to be true. The urban legend is that it is the dome.
It even shows up in some OMRDB reports that, yes, that's the dome, but it's a report.
Is
So.
that in danger? Is the dome in danger?
It is splitting.
As that goes, it's gone.
There is an outer covering over it. It isn't just the glass exposed to the elements. There is a protective covering over it, but probably just from foundation shifting. Yeah, there's just been movement in the glass. You could actually see gaps of light between the lead frame.
Anybody else have any questions regarding photography, Char's work, her day job?
Mike had a question.
No, Char, I don't want to take over the talk, but I'm Mike Kuzma, and I was actually the president of Friends of Jay and Adam. And we did not actually have a good relationship with the town of Perrysburg. if you recall, the state, through Empire State Development, wanted to sell the property to Tom Trathen, a logger, and his plan was to actually pulverize the buildings and cut down the old growth forest. So we being David Franzek, the council president, myself as president of Friends of Jay and Adam, and David Swift, who lives in Perrysburg, we actually sued the city of Buffalo, the state of New York, Empire State Development to void the sale between the state and Trathen. We lost in state Supreme Court, however, we won in the appellate division, 4th Department. So right now, if that lawsuit hadn't been successful, Tom Trathen would have owned the
Already
property.
got it.
He was so confident that he was going to get that property, he had already marked the mature forest or old growth trees. But Dale Volker was a big proponent of the sale of the property to Trathen. And the town folks, if you check some of the local papers, they did not like me. There's one of the penny savers. I was attacked viciously by some of the locals. They wrote letters to the editor blasting me for what I had done. And right now there is nothing happening. The property's been stripped, it's been fenced. It's actually 649 acres. In addition to the facility, there's 12 residences. I didn't see those photographs. But it was a long battle. We worked with Sam, we tried to work with Sam Hoyt. Kathy Young, the state senator from that region, is not a supporter of preserving that property. I'm trying to think who else. I mean, I could go on and on, but if anyone has any questions about our lawsuit or some of the attempts we've made to try to save the property.
Where does it stand now?
Well, right now, just so you know, James Noble Adam, the mayor of the city of Buffalo, bought the property, or he gave it to the people of the city of Buffalo, and the people of the city of Buffalo raised $200,000 to build that property, or build that complex for the people. And what happened was it was a TB facility for several decades. The city of Buffalo ran it. We had people from all over the state seeking treatment there. I believe it was the 50s. The state took it over, and then we started to treat so-called mentally retarded individuals. And what happened was there was a move away from these big institutions, and they constructed a group home or group homes on a portion of the property. So the Empire State Development and the other agency, they actually tried to sell this property without the consent of the city of Buffalo. And if you look at the original deed, the city of Buffalo never gave title to the property to the state of New York. We always kept what they called a reversionary interest. And the way the deed read was that if we ever stopped using it as a TB facility, that the property would revert back to the city. So they cannot sell that property without the consent of the city of Buffalo. Now, given the current makeup of the Buffalo Common Council, I do not think if there was a move now to sell it again, that the city would block it. And I would add that if the sale with Trathen had gone through, the city would have only realized a few $100,000.
So Buffalo gave operational control to the state of New York in 48. So the state of New York would have been the principal operator until 93 or 95 when the offices closed. I believe it was 95. So who's making decisions about that property now?
Right now, what's the facility in West Seneca? Is it, for example, if you wanted to arrange a tour, you have to go through that office, but it's very difficult. Even though the city has that reversionary interest and actually owns the property, you still have to go through the state of New York to even get access. And it got so bad near the end after our lawsuit, Dave Franzek, as the council president, could not even get access to the property. It was fenced in, and if you penetrate the fence has been cut open, you can be charged with trespass. And I know at least one person who was charged criminally. But as a city employee, council president was not allowed access, which is outrageous. Now, from what I understand, Sam Hoyt, who's now the regional person for Empire State Development, was actually approached by the town of Perrysburg about the J.N. Adam facility. He went down there trying to appease the people. He then met with Dave Franzik and myself, and then Sam got sidetracked on other issues. So if anyone is friendly with Sam Hoyt and can lobby him and say, look, you gotta really do something about this, I strongly encourage you to do so. But Sam knows that property, he knows the history of it, he knows us, what we did with the lawsuit. So if anyone can get through to Sam, it wouldn't hurt. But there was talk of putting out RFPs. Steve Golick is an attorney with Empire State Development, and there was talk of putting out RFPs again. And the loggers are just, chomping at the bit to get that place.
That's scary. But again, is it salvageable? It may not be because of the condition it's in.
Well, I think that was done deliberately. Somebody literally, when I was last in the main administration building, someone had chopped a hole in the roof. I'm convinced some of the state employees did that. I can't prove it, but I think some of that was done deliberately.
Well, Char, it seems that you brought up the topic. It certainly has a lot of passion behind it.
Yes.
And maybe, the act of, preserving it through photography might be all that's left for us to do. Or, look at some of the different artifacts that are available through the State Museum, or any that might end up here. But I would like to ask everybody to maybe take a breather, join us downstairs in the Key Bank room, linger, feel free to wander about the museum, take a good look at it. I don't know if all of you had a chance to see our museum gallery. I'd also like to let you know that Char does have some of her prints available for sale at our museum store. And again, thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for the experience. And have the state